Dinosaurs, the oversized chickens of the Mesozoic, are probably one of the most famous inhabitants of the prehistoric world, but just like today, where birds make up only a fragment of the species of the world, there were numerous other creatures that shared our planet alongside those ancient dinosaurs. Pterosaurs, belemnites, fish, and marine reptiles such as Ichthyosaurus, to name but a few. But today we'll be focusing on one particular species of animal, with a most distinctive discoverer, a species that gave rise to rumours and legends of one of the most mysterious monsters of the modern age, Plesiosaurus. Hello and welcome, I am Second Voltage and this is Paleo Corner, a series where I make some paleo art and we learn about the fascinating creatures of prehistory along the way. First, I'd like to say thanks to everyone who watched the last video, I really do appreciate it. Now in this episode, we go back to the Jurassic, to an incredibly successful species that was able to survive all the way from the early Jurassic 200 million years ago to the late Cretaceous 65 million years ago. Its progress was stopped only by the same extinction event that killed the dinosaurs. This is Plesiosaurus, and no, it's not the Loch Ness monster. We're pretty sure now that's just a big eel, but Plesiosaurus' fame goes back long before the famous surgeon's photograph. It was an important discovery in the early years of paleontology, and was discovered by one of, if not perhaps the most iconic fossil hunter the world has ever seen. Mary Anning lived from 1799 to 1847 in Lyme Regis in Dorset, England. This was not a good time to be a woman. It was even less of a good time to be a woman in the field of science, which makes her significant contributions to the fields of paleontology and geology even more impressive. She got into fossil hunting from a young age, as it was somewhat of a family business. Her father would often take her and her brother fossil hunting as a child. The science of paleontology was still new, and most people had no idea whatsoever what a fossil even was, let alone a dinosaur. But they still found them, especially along the Jurassic coast in England, where many fossils are still commonly found to this day. People would sell fossils as curiosities to travellers, and that is precisely what Anning's family did. Mary would in fact later inherit her family's fossil shop and become its proprietor. Though these were still tough times and she would struggle financially for most of her life. Thankfully, she was not without friends willing to help her. Her friend geologist Henry de la Beche painted the iconic painting Duria Antiquior, the first widely circulated pictorial representation of prehistoric life derived from fossil reconstructions. So one could say the first proper paleo art, which he based largely on fossils Anning had found. He sold prints of this painting for her benefit. But not content merely selling fossils, she wanted to know precisely what they were and so pursued the field of paleontology. She made many important discoveries in the early days of the field, including the first complete Plesiosaurus, which would become the holotype, and also the first correctly identified Ichthyosaur, the first pterosaur discovered outside of Germany, and numerous fish fossils. She also played a key role in the discovery that coprolites, known as bezoar stones at the time.
Where, Mr. Potter, would you look if I asked you to find me a bezoar?
I don't know, sir.
Were in fact fossilized poop of dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals. She also discovered that belemnite fossils contain fossilized ink sacs, linking them very closely to modern cephalopods. Despite her incredibly important finds, as a woman she was not allowed to join the Geological Society of London, nor was she always given full credit for her work. Often, credit of her discoveries was given to other male scientists who wrote papers on them. Today at least, she is correctly credited for all the specimens that we know she discovered. She lived an incredible and important life, and whilst many of her achievements were not recognised in her own time, I'm sure she would be pleased to know, if alive today, that her contributions to science are recognised as some of the most important in their field, and are all correctly attributed to her. Now I may have gone off on a tangent somewhat here, as Mary Anning is a person I deeply admire and respect, But let's get back to the focus of this video, the Plesiosaurus, one of the many animals she discovered. Though Plesiosaurus was actually not originally discovered by her. It was in fact discovered in 1821, when it was also named by William Conybeare and Henry de la Beche. It was given the name Plesiosaurus, which means close to lizard, to indicate it was more lizard-like than the also recently discovered Ichthyosaurus in the same fossil bed. But this was based on incomplete material. In 1823, Anning found the first complete specimen, and this was considered the holotype. Plesiosaurus had a small head and a long, slender neck, though its range of movement would have been relatively stiff. It had a turtle-like body, a short tail, 2 pairs of elongated paddles, and had up to about 48 teeth. It was roughly 11 foot long. As its name suggests, it was originally thought to have been somewhat lizard-like, but specimens have been found with skin samples that indicate it had smooth skin, not scaly, rather like a dolphin, which makes sense since these were marine animals. Their diet likely consisted of fish, mollusks, and other sea creatures such as belemnites. Plesiosaurus lived 200 to 65 million years ago, from the Jurassic through to the Cretaceous. The fact they were around for so long indicates they were highly successful predators. They have been found worldwide and would have lived in oceans, perhaps taking some occasional reprieve on land or on islands. The nostrils in their skulls appear to not be adapted for water breathing, so they likely behave similarly to modern-day marine mammals such as seals. Another similarity to modern-day marine mammals is that Plesiosaurus likely gave birth to live young rather than laying eggs. This is similar to other marine reptiles of the time, such as Ichthyosaurus, but at the time this was somewhat of an oddity. There are many specimens of Plesiosaurus and other plesiosaurs that have been found. From studying them, we've concluded that despite earlier depictions of Plesiosaurus having a bendy neck, it would have had limited movement, and would have had to straighten its neck to achieve acceleration in the water. This could potentially make hunting rather difficult, but as I stated earlier, they must have been successful predators. Some hypothesized that perhaps they were instead ambush predators, waiting for prey to come close to them rather than chasing them down in pursuit. Its U-shaped jaw worked like a fish trap, so its prey would find it very difficult to escape once within its grasp. They propelled themselves solely by their paddles, their tails being too short to be of any use. But one other possible use for their neck was as a rudder when navigating during a chase. If their necks were indeed stiff, they would serve well as a steering apparatus, so perhaps they chased down prey more often than some might think. So, here we are with my paleo-art of Plesiosaurus and how it may have looked. This one took not a lot of time at all actually. My Utahraptor took quite a while because of all the feathers, but Plesiosaurus is streamlined and comparatively featureless so as to glide through the water with ease. I think there isn't much debate anymore on how Plesiosaurus looked. We have a lot of specimens, and given their similarities to modern marine animals, we're probably not too far off with depictions like these. And here's a vague human shape for size comparison. But that wasn't always the case. When dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals were first discovered, scientists got really muddled up as to their skeletal structures and depicted them, in some cases, completely wrong. The most famous case of this being the iguanodon replicas amongst the Crystal Palace dinosaurs, where the animal was depicted more like a giant iguana, hence its name. We now know it looked very different. Iguanodon isn't the only dinosaur amongst the Crystal Palace dinosaurs though, and many of the other depictions were based on Mary Anning's discoveries, including Plesiosaurus. It's perhaps one of the more accurate depictions amongst the Crystal Palace sculptures, though it is still inaccurate compared to our knowledge today. Its neck would not be so bendy, the torso would be more round and robust, and the paddles as well would not have had nearly as much range of movement as shown. The Crystal Palace dinosaurs were finished in 1855, after Anning's death, so she never got to see these life-size reconstructions of her discoveries. But sites like Crystal Palace Park help these creatures of prehistory to remain remembered today. But perhaps there will come a day, much like the loss of the Great Library of Alexandria, when we lose records of our society and our research. Perhaps a day will come where these ancient animals sink back into the past once more. But one that shall always live on in our memory is surely Plesiosaurus, not for its significance to science, or its significance to its prehistoric ecosystem, but it shall always be remembered for a folk story turned conspiracy theory that this animal lives on in a loch in Scotland. It doesn't though, it's an eel, and possibly also elephants. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like it, please like and subscribe.